Please be seated. The court is now in session. Today, the chamber continues to hear testimony of witness Cambodia Alice Dutch. Ms. Jia Siu Huang, please report the attendance of the parties and other individuals to today's proceedings. Greffier. Mr. President, for today's proceedings, all parties to this case are present, except Counsel Kung Samon, the National Counsel for Kir Sampon, who will be absent today for personal matters. Mr. Nunji is present in the holding cell downstairs. He has waived his right to be present in the courtroom. The waiver has been delivered to the greffier. The witness who is to continue his testimony today, that is Cambodia Alice Dutch, is already present in the courtroom. Thank you. President, thank you, Mr. Jia Siu Huang. The chamber now decides on the request by Noon Jia. The chamber has received a waiver from Noon Jia dated 13 June 2016, which states that due to his health, that is headache, back pain, he cannot sit or concentrate for long, and in order to effectively participate in future hearings, he requests to waive his right to be present at the 13 June 2016 hearing. He advises that his counsel advised him about the consequence of this waiver, that in no way it can be construed as a waiver of his rights to be tried fairly or to challenge evidence presented to or admitted by this court at any time during this trial. Having seen the medical report of Noon Jia by the duty doctor for the accused at the ECCC dated 13 June 2016, which notes that Noon Jia has a chronic back pain and it becomes severe when he sits for long, and recommends that the chamber shall grant him his request so that he can follow the proceedings remotely from the holding cell downstairs. Based on the above information and pursuant to Rule 81.5 of the ECCC internal rules, the chamber grants Noon Jia his request to follow today's proceedings remotely from the holding cell downstairs via and audio-visual means. The chamber instructs the AV unit personnel to link the proceedings to the room downstairs so that Noon Jia can follow. That applies for the whole day. I'd like to hand the floor now to the lead co-lawyers for civil parties to continue putting further questions to the witness. You may proceed.
Merci. Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, witness. I'll continue putting questions to you for about 30 minutes, and then I'll give the floor to my colleague, Mr. Ang Pik. For a start, I would like to continue putting questions on the topic we started with on Thursday afternoon, the issue of sexual assault at S21. And these questions will enable you to react to what you said on Thursday afternoon at 15 hours 25. You said the following, and I quote, "I am only aware of one single case, that of a young man who sexually assaulted my former professor. This was an error that was committed as part of the interrogation." Witness, who was that professor you referred to? And what can you tell us about what happened during his interrogation, or during her interrogation?
First, allow me to clarify that at S21 office, in relation to sexual rape, the National Co-Prosecutor, Madame Jia Ling, during her final pleading, said that there was only one case that a young man was found to engage in sexual harassment, that he used a stick to insert into the vagina. And that was the case that I heard of, and I felt so remorseful for that. There was no evidence to actually prove about that. I spoke about that matter with Netayer in April 1994, since there was no remaining document at S21. Regarding their incidents of sexual rapes, to me, they were all fabricated. And that teacher or professor was Dum Sarun. At that time, I was still studying, and that happened in 1955. Her husband, Kai Kum Hood, taught me at a senior level during my schooling. And later on, we actually joined the revolution together.
Et comment s'appelait son mari?
And what was her husband's name? I'll show you a document subsequently.
I just mentioned her husband's name. Her husband's name is Kai Kum Hood.
Je vous remercie, Monsieur le témoin.
Thank you, witness. I would like to have placed on the screen a document you have in the blue folder that was given to you on Thursday afternoon. And that is document E3/10277. That is a list of prisoners from the women's section. The date of entry of those prisoners was the 13th of July, 1977. ERN in Khmer. This document is available only in Khmer. 01017149. Witness, may I request you to look at entry 45 on the list. Mr. President, may I be allowed to place this document on the screen so that the parties and the public may acquaint themselves with it?
Yes, you may proceed.
Donc, Monsieur le témoin.
Witness, you find here on the screen a list with a red rectangle indicating the name Sarun you referred to a while ago. It is also indicated that she was a wife of Kekumvert. Can you confirm that? Can you confirm that this entry on the list corresponds to the professor you have just referred to?
Kai Kum Hood was my professor, and Dum Sarun was also my professor. The husband and the wife were both my professors or my teachers.
Et donc nous avons sur cette liste.
So we have on this list, you have in hand the date of entry, 13th of July 1977. Do you recall that date, and does it remind you of the date on which you were aware that Sir Sarun and Kakum Put were at S21?
do not have a clear recollection of the date. That is 13th of July 77. I believe in principle this list is a proper list. At S21, for important prisoners, when they arrived, they were not yet registered on the list, and Comrade T was not authorized to register the names yet. So I can conclude that the date of 13 July 77, that is the arrival date of Kakam Hur and his wife, could be a correct date. And of course, the list was reported to me, and I knew of the arrival of my teachers. That is all I want to say.
Je vous remercie.
Thank you. That is very clear. Were you aware of the event you referred to at the beginning of the hearing, the fact that an interrogator thrust a stick into the vagina of teacher Sir Sarun? And if yes, what was your reaction at the time, and what measures did you take?
During my current testimony as well as my previous testimony, I made that point clear. However, allow me to reiterate it. On that day, I was at my working place, which was also my residence. I lived and worked at the same house, although it was in a different room. And my main task was review documents, and that day Ho hurriedly came to me, and of course he knew who Ho was. He was my deputy, and he told me that this person actually stuck a stick into the vagina of my teacher. I was angry, and I told him to remove him from the women interrogation unit. And that evening, I reported the matter to Son Sen. In my capacity as the chairman of S21, I did not have any authority to request Angka to make an arrest of anyone, but my authority was to transfer or remove that person from one post to another post. I made the report to my superior Q, and he did not issue any decision to arrest that individual. For that reason, that person was not arrested.
Vous souvenez-vous de...
Do you remember the identity of the interrogator in question, or the name of the interrogator in question?
No, I did not actually delve into details of the matter, and I cannot recall the name of that person.
Je vous remercie.
Thank you. A question for purposes of clarification, because I am not sure I properly understood the translation in French of what you said. You said that the person was subsequently transferred from the women's interrogation section. Are you talking about your teacher who was transferred to the women's interrogation section? And if yes, can you provide further explanations as to what you mean when you say women's interrogation?
Thank you for asking for clarification on this matter. And of course, I'd like to clarify the matter so everyone is clear. It's clear that is for everyone here and for all Cambodian people. I removed that interrogator from the female interrogation unit. At the same time, I required all cadres at S21 who were married to have their wives interrogate female prisoners, namely female comrade Mott, the wives of Ho, who was from the clothes making factory, comrade Ho's wife, who was from former Division 703, as well as a number of other comrades, including comrades Ron, and also the wife of Pond. The wives of these cadres were used to interrogate the female prisoners, and that was the times that they formed this female or women interrogation unit, and their tasks were to ask or to interrogate the female prisoners.
Je vous remercie.
Thank you. As regards all those women, did they stay at S21 up to the end, or some of them disappeared or were executed while they were at S21?
That response was also a good response. The wives of Ho, Pon, Trau, and Pon remained at the center until the day they were fleeing from Vietnamese troops. Hui was arrested, and for that reason his wife Kun and the children were also arrested. So out of those female cadres, only one woman or one female cadre was arrested.
Savez-vous pourquoi?
Do you know why Dim Sarun and your teacher, Kei Kemarut, were arrested? You stated a while ago that you were informed of their presence at S21. Do you know why they were arrested?
It's a long story, and allow me to summarize it. Between 1978, Brother Mok actually removed 4 intellectuals from the southwest zone, and that they had to leave the zone within 24 hours, including Pain Elise Su, Kai Kum Hut, and I do not recall his alias, that could be Mon, Chi Hun alias Wang, and another individual, Chun alias Mai. They had to leave the zone within 24 hours. So the parties actually sent them to northwest zone. Later on, they were complicated in a number of confessions. And as a result, Office 870 arrested the 4 and sent them to S21. And that is the reason for their arrest and arrival at S21. And Kakum Hut was brought along with his wife, the Masarun.
Je vous remercie, et juste pour...
Thank you. Let me point out that the list you have identified indicates that K. Kim Hood arrived on the 13th of July, 1970.
Sur la question des interrogatrices, de ces épouses de cadres qui...
Regarding the interrogations of the spouses of cadres who interrogated detainees, beginning with Rakam. We've already referred to that on Thursday. That's a transcript of your case, E3/7473. We are on the 21st of July, 2009, and it is 15 hours 53. And Prakam is questioned on the same issue, that is regarding the presence of interrogators who are both male and female. And Prakam was asked the following question. I'll ask the question and then we'll look at the answer in order for you to react. Question: did you yourself ever have to interrogate female detainees? Answer: I interrogated a woman on one occasion. Question: when was that? Answer: or rather, question, was it at the beginning of your functions as an interrogator or rather at the end? Was it a time when there were female interrogators, or it was at a time when there were no longer any female interrogators? Or was it before there were female interrogators? And Prakam's answer was as follows. The interrogation of that prisoner occurred towards the end of the period when there were no longer any female interrogators. So the work done by female interrogators was assigned to male interrogators. Question: did you interrogate her alone? Answer: yes, I was alone, but the interrogation occurred differently because all the doors and windows at the time had to be left wide open in order that anyone who passed by there could see that there was nothing illegal occurring. What is your reaction, witness, to what Prakan said regarding you? Essentially that at a certain point in time there were no longer any female interrogators and it was male interrogators who continued interrogating the detainees.
Allow me to clarify the matter that development of the interrogation unit, and in particular for male detainees, and for the female detainees, and the development of the changes were like what I described earlier. Male cadres were not assigned to interrogate female detainees, and the male interrogators were not executed, except Kern. And as for Hui was ordered by Onka to be arrested. And as for Ho was with me. How could I arrest Mott? So when the male cadres were working with me, it would not be possible for me to arrest their wives. So that statement by Prakon is not correct. I can say that the testimony of Prakon before this chamber is not reliable.
Je vous remercie. Je voudrais...
Thank you. I would like you to react to another testimony we heard in this particular case, and I'm referring to the testimony of Lakmien. We also referred to him on Thursday afternoon, on 26th of April 2016, and it is the draft transcript for the time being, up to 10 hours 2 a.m. And I'll read out to you the question in order for you to understand the context, and I'll then read Lakmien's answer. Question: were there any female interrogators who had to interrogate women, or it was the usual interrogators who interrogated female prisoners? Answer: there were no female interrogators. There was only Pom's spouse. She was working there. As for Deutsch's wife, she didn't work within the premises but outside. There was another woman, Heng's wife, and only Heng's wife, H-A-E-N, for the interpreters. She's the only person who had access to the interrogation room within S21. However, I do not know whether those women interrogated female detainees or not. Witness, do you have any remarks to make? Because it appears that at least 2 interrogators were not aware of the existence of that female interrogation unit, and they continued interrogating a woman after the unit was set up. Do you have any remarks to make in that regard?
I do not have any remark to make, but I'd like to tell the truth in relation to this individual, Large Mien. Interrogators, cadres, including Large Mien, but the person who appeared before this chamber in case 001 was not the Large Mien, who was my subordinate. And I believe you can refer to the transcript. When the office of the co-prosecutors showed him the signature of Large Mien categorically denied, and he said that it was not his signature, and the co-prosecutor was laughing at the time. So this proves that Large Mien, who appeared before this chamber during the proceedings in case 001, was another person, and he was not the real Large Mien. He was someone who was made up as a Large Mien. So for that reason, the testimony of that individual shall not be considered. And the statements that Pon's wife was living outside and my wife was working in the military hospital, although she stayed at home, that is a correct statement. And later on, toward the end of the regime, she was pregnant with my second child, and for that reason she stopped working and stayed at home with me. And for that reason, I did not bring her to work in S21. And Ho's wife, that is Mod. If I still use Ho as my subordinate, how could I remove the Mod, that is his wife? She was a niece of Secretary of Sector 31. And if I dare to remove her, then I will be in trouble. So the female cadres who interrogated the female detainees remained until the 6th of January 1979.
Thank you. I would like to put to you a last series of questions, which will be based on the 12 moral commandments. And I'd like to know if you remember still today these 12 moral commandments. And if yes, can you tell the chamber what you remember?
regarding the 12 moral principles. It was disseminated in 1978. Though I actually read it in 1971 after I was released, and then I re-engaged with my revolutionary work. The first line to our principle is to always love, to respect and serve the worker, peasant people. Always. And the second principle is that wherever you are, serve the people there with all your heart. That is, serve the workers and the peasants there with all your heart. And the third, do not engage in doing anything that impacts the people, not even one chili pepper or one word. Number 4, if you commit a mistake regarding the people, you must apologize to the people. And number 5, in sitting, eating, follow the people's style. And number 6, do not behave in any way that violates females. And one of the principles states that you shall always sacrifice yourself. And allow me to expand that point a little bit. Poncho mentioned in his book that is Year Zero that always engage in sacrifice and labor. But the word sacrifice and labor does not go hand in hand together, because the word sacrifice, it means you dare to die for the revolution. That is sacrifice. As for labor, it means that in the morning you have to carry water in the bucket, etc. So the interpretation by Poncho is not that accurate. And for that reason, I'd like to state during this testimony that one of the principles mentioned by Poncho is not correct. As for the rest of the principles, I cannot recall them right now.
Thank you. Can you explain to the chamber what the purpose was, or what the status was of these principles? Was this an ideal to reach for any revolutionary? Can you somehow describe what these 12 revolutionary principles were back then, what they represented?
Thank you. This is an appropriate question. I would like to elaborate it. You can refer to the terms in the 12 precepts of a revolutionary, particular number 2, wherever you are, serve the people there with all your heart. Peasants here do not refer to the people in general. That is the idea of CPK. That is the peasant based on the party's class. And there is another point in the 12 precepts of a revolutionary. If you commit some mistakes regarding the people, you must apologize to the people. So the question is, who adhered to the 12 precepts at the time. I cannot say that everyone adheres to the 12 precepts, but I myself was committed to the 12 precepts, and I told the chamber about my commitments to 12 precepts, and I had committed some mistakes regarding the people, so I had already apologized the people. And concerning the drinking or did anything wrong, I myself apologized the people. One day in 1960s, I made a mistake. I went to a study session and I admitted my mistake that I had drank the sugar palm juice, and I confessed to my mistake at the time in a study session. That is, I had drank palm wine. And concerning another precept, do not play around with girls or women. I instructed my cadres about this precept. I instructed to have the doors and windows wide open while interrogating, and I instructed that to the interrogators. That is the principle. And when Brother Nguyen was my superior, he instructed me not to interrogate female detainees, and I myself had never interrogated a female detainee since I was busy with reading the documents. This is what I would like to tell you. And about another 12 precepts, precept number 12, not to do not touch common property, and the loots of the war belongs to the party, so I did not dare to touch common property. What I had gathered, I would send it to the party. Within my family, if there was no me, and if I disappeared, my parents, my siblings, my nieces and nephews were also gone. So I, at the time, told my professors, my parents, that I had to leave and join the revolution for the benefits of the nation. That is what I want to inform the court.
Thank you, witness. I must put an end to my examination, but I have a few questions regarding the moral precept, in particular precept number 6, so that everyone can follow you, including in a public gallery. And I'd like to display on the screen document E3/776, E3/765, Khmer ERN 003764993 and 94, title and substance of the principle. Mr. President, this is an excerpt from Revolutionary Flag, issue number 10 of October 1978. And if you please allow me, I would like to read out precept number 6. You normally have these precepts in your blue folder. And Mr. President, if you please allow me to, I would like to display it on the screen so that witness, you can also see it on the screen. And I'm also going to read what's explained below this precept. Do not behave in any way that violates females. It's Principle 6, ERN in French 005.
President, yes, your request is granted, and the documents shall be shown on the screens on the request of the co-lead lawyer for civil parties, particularly the specific page of that document. And Mr. Witness, do you have the page of document with you? And let me inform you, lead co-lawyer for civil parties, that the witness may not be able to read the document on the screens because it is blurred and it's not shown clearly on the screen. So please provide the documents to the witness in case of necessity.
Merci, Monsieur.
Thank you, Mr. President. Normally there was a copy in the blue folder, but I see that the witness does not have it. So if you please allow me, I will provide him with a second copy so that he may refer to it. Okay.
President, you may proceed.
Vous avez un petit...
So you have a little red tab so that you may find it, but I can also give him this copy. It's precept number 6. So you can look at the ERN number at the top of the page, 0037-6493, regarding the title of the precept, and 94 for the explanation of this precept. And I would like to read out, Mr. President, the explanation of this precept, which is do not behave in any way that violates females, and the following is indicated. Briefly speaking, never violate sexual morality in no case. Indeed, this issue tarnishes our honor and our influence as revolutionaries. This violates the noble and clean tradition of our population. However, therefore, on the one hand, this damages our people, and on the other hand, what is important is that if we violate sexual morality, which represents, in fact, the true nature, the true corrupted and stinking nature of enemies of all kinds, the enemies will then have the means to manipulate and seduce us. Therefore, we would be facing a very strong danger, and the revolutionary movement would also be facing a danger. Regarding couples, there is no obstacle to that today, under the condition that that we base ourselves on the two principles of the party. First principle, the two people in the couple must agree. Second, the community favors and accepts this, and therefore everything can be sealed. So there's no reason that should oblige us to transgress sexual morality. Witness, I have a question in order to allow us to better understand what this principle, precept number 6, means. Is it true that we should understand from this that male-to-female relations had to be approved by the community and therefore by the party? Is that how I must understand this precept number 6?
Thank you. Let me clarify the point. There is the principle Let me bring up an example in relation to my case. I was over 30 years old. I was 32 years old in 1972, so I considered myself quite old, 1974 rather. So at the time, I was looking for a female to be my wife, and I found Kom, who is my current wife. At the time, I made a request to the office that I loved Comrade Rom, and I asked someone to ask Rom whether she loved me, and if she did not, that matter should be left alone. 3 days later, some went to ask Comrade Rom, and 3 days later, Rom told some that she respected the decision of Angka, and at the time, Tamok made a decision. Rom at the time was under Tamok. She was the chief of government sector, and I was under Won, the special zone secretary, and later on I was under Sun Sen. So Angka at the time had a relation with one another. On 17 April 1975, I made a request to marry Comrade Rom. That is my case. And about the love between the younger comrades, I do not know about that. There is one case, a young man loved another young woman, and later on that the couple were allowed to get married. In 1978, I went to join a study session with Pol Pot about the precepts or principles, and he said that the couple who loved one another should be allowed to get married. That was the principle or the practice of Angka. In 1974, there was one case who was part of the Aung San committee, and that person joined the enemy after his marriage was refused. That was the situation or practice at the time. So the principles, the 12 principles, could be a measure to prevent the infringements of the moral acts. Paul, kill, harm, did not violate the principles, but there was another person, Koi Thuan, violated the principles. And the story of Koi Thuan was related, the mistakes of Koi Thuan was related to the violation of the precepts.
Thank you for shedding light on these precepts, because of course this is relevant to all of the questions I put to you previously. I would like now to put a question to you in the following way. Was any sexual relations outside of wedlock, which would have been approved by Angkor, would that have been considered as a form as a moral offense?
That is true. That was the immoral act.
what would then happen when two people were discovered as engaging in moral misconduct? Were both people punished? Were they punished in the same way? Can you tell us exactly what would happen in that case?
Thank you. If the individuals were caught in the action, they would be smashed. But for some cases, they were tolerated, and those people were prevented from committing immoral misconducts again. So the marriage would be organized for those people. So the measure at the time was to arrest the people with misconducts. Chan was already married, and later on Chan joined with the enemy, and there was a case, the case of Aung San Suu Committee. That person also joined the enemy.
And my last question now, in order to be clear about this issue, when two people were caught engaging in a non-approved sexual relation, that is, say, a man that might have abused of a woman, in that case, was the woman punished just as much as the man who had assaulted this woman? What was the principle that was applied back then?
Concerning the actual incident, I cannot tell you about specific cases happening at the time, but I can tell the general situation. There were no cases of violent rapes, but there were cases that they loved, so the couple loved one another and committed immoral misconducts. And if you asked me to elaborate on the specific cases, I cannot do so.
Thank you, witness. I believe I am done with my questions. My colleague also has some questions for you. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, witness, for having answered my questions.
Mr. President, good morning, Your Honors. Allow me to have follow-up questions after my colleague. Good morning, everyone in and around the courtroom, and good morning, Mr. Witness. My name is Pech Ong. I am the co-lead lawyer, the national co-lead lawyer for civil parties with my international colleague who have just finished her questioning. I have some questions in relation to the treatment of detainees or prisoners at S21. I would like to bring up the case of Chom Mei, and I believe that you know Chom Mei very well. Chom Mei came to testify in K001 before the chamber. Recently, Chom Mei came to testify before this chamber on 18 April 2016 in his transcript E1/417.1 at 10:37:43 seconds, Jumei was asked a question about the torture against him. Besides beatings, what other types of tortures were inflicted on you? And he responded that at the time he was beaten up and he raised his hand and one of his fingers was broken, and the pliers were used to pull out his nails from his big toe as well. Jumei testified that pliers were used to pull off the nail from his big toe. Could you explain this case before the chamber? Was that kind of torture inflicted on the prisoners at S21?
ขอบคุณ
Witness, thank you. In relation to torture against prisoners in general, or the case of Jumei, pulling off the toenails was discussed by me before the chamber in case 001 proceedings. I learned of one incident Ho told me that toenails were pulled off. And at the time I instructed him, I was serious about that, and instructed him to stop that kind of practice. Jumei stated that his toenails were pulled off. I told the court already that I had never been informed of such incident at S21. I told Bronx War already, and I told him that nothing happened to toenails of Jumei. And during the proceeding in case 001, the camera showed the toenails of Jumei, and it was the decision of the court to decide on the issue. So now I do not have any things to explain you on the case, but I can tell you of only what I have told you. But Jumei says that although the nail came back, but it is not in good form nowadays. And do you happen to know that the needle was inserted into the toe of prisoners? Answer. Ho came to tell me about the practices of pulling off the nails, and I instructed Ho to stop that kind of practice. I warned Ho at the time not to continue the practice, and at the time I was not really aware of the practice of pulling off nails or inserting needles into the nails. I have another question for you, Mr. Witness. Jumei made a mention about electrocution. Electric wire was used to electrocute him, and last week you testified before the chamber that electric wires were attached to toes of detainees, and then the detainees were electrocuted. In the same document, 81/417.1 at 10:37, Chung Mei told the court as follows. I told them that I did not know CIA or KGB agents, although I told them that they continued beating me. Then they inserted electrical wires into my ears and I could hear the explosion. And the question was further put to Chung Mei, how many times were you electrocuted? Chung Mei responded that he was electrocuted 2 times, and now one side of his ear and eye could not see clearly and could not hear clearly. What can you tell about the electrocution inflicted on Chung Mei? Did such a practice happen at S21?
Allow me to clarify this matter. Regarding the authorization and the practice of such torture under the supervision of NAT, that happens, that is, a manually dialed telephone was used for such purpose. Later on, I heard Comrade Tui said that electric wire from a wall plug was used to attach to a toe, and the other side of the electric wire would be used to shock the prisoner, and that did happen. And I authorized the electrocution, but I strictly forbade them not to let any prisoner die, so that their confession or interrogation are cut off. Later on, while we fled from the June troop, Comrade Bond mentioned about the practice. He said that he electrocuted a prisoner named Pao Bun Singh. One wire was attached to his organ, and the other side was another electric wire was used to shock the prisoner. And of course that happened so late already, I could not punish him. As for Chung Mei, during his testimony, I do not recall that one electric wire was used to attach to his earlobe. So I cannot say about the electrocution by attaching one electric wire to an earlobe. If a prisoner was subjected to that, I do not believe the prisoner would survive. And I cannot say whether such practice was used on him. Question. Again, in relation to Chung Mei, I'd like to answer another question. In the transcript, again, of 18 April 2016, that is the same document, E1/417.1, at around 10 hours, 53 minutes and 33 seconds, he said that when we had to relieve ourselves and when it spilled on the floor, we had to lick it clean. And the same thing when we had to urinate, And if it's spilled, we had to lick the spilled clean. And Chung may say because he was afraid of being bitten, he had to lick his own feces. So in this case, when the victim spilled his feces or urine, was ordered to lick it clean in the detention cell. Can you shed light on this matter before the chamber, whether it actually happened? Answer. This is a specific example, and I myself did not supervise such incident, and I was never reported about such incident. For that reason, on this issue, when urine or feces was spilled and that the detainee had to lick it clean, I cannot say whether it actually happened at S21. And for that reason, I cannot acknowledge of its existence. Question. At S21, were there any regulations or rules that are set out about the spill of feces on the floor and that detainee would be disciplined by such behavior? Answer. The remaining regulations that I saw and that were written by Ho, and that the surviving document remained, and I acknowledge of its existence. As for the writing on the board regarding the Santipal rules, I denied that. Because that's not the principles that the detainees had to follow those regulations. There were regulations for the guards, and there is a surviving document, and I believe you can refer to that. And I actually acknowledge its existence. As for the rules regarding the behavior or regarding when detainees has to relieve themselves, I never saw such regulations. Question. Before the break time, I'd like to ask you a few more questions. When prisoners were arrested and brought to S21, did S21 have the mechanism to inform detainees about their right, that is a right to free speech or right to counsel? Answer, no, there was none. Even when I made Koi Trun, as I testified last time, I did not inform him of anything. I only said that you no longer had the right to meet with Angkar, and you could only report to Angkar through me. However, I humbly spoke to him about this. Council, Mr. President, so we take a break now, or so I continue. President, it is now appropriate for our short break. We take a break now and resume at 10:30 to continue our proceedings. Court officer, please assist the witness at the waiting room reserved for witnesses and civil parties during the break time, and invite him back into the courtroom at 10:30. The court is now in recess.